Welcome to the Outer Realm with Michelle DeRoche and Amelia Pisano. Airing live on the United Public Radio Network, 105.3 FM in New Orleans.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Thursday night segment of The Outer Realm. We are broadcasting live right here in the United Public Radio Network, UFO Paranormal Radio Network, and 105.3 FM from beautiful New Orleans. We are fully sponsored by the amazing people over at Folgers Coffee who have been a part of our journey since the very beginning, and this journey would not be the same if we didn't have them. So thank you. We appreciate you so much. Also, big appreciation to our other sponsor, Justin Snicker, Dr. Snick, aka the Sonic Surgeon, an award-winning blah 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 composer, apologies, of Halloween horror, sci-fi, and dark wave electronic music, which can be found on your favorite platforms just in time for spooky season coming up. He has got new music, and you guys are going to love it. Perfect Halloween music. Also, big thank you to Steve McGinnis, who is responsible for our artwork. So thank you, thank you, thank you. So, of course, I am bubbleless. Again, no bubbles tonight. She is still down under the weather, so let's just send her some really good vibes over her way. Never the same without her, of course. We miss her, and really hope she gets better soon. Tonight, we welcome the return of Peter Panagore, and he's definitely like a favorite with a lot of the listeners. So we're really, really pleased to have him back. He's going to be talking about UFOs and extraterrestrials and ghosts. And, you know, again, as we head into spooky month, we'll be kicking it off, which is really great. And a little bit out of the norm, you know, because he really talks a lot about his near-death experience and such. Just, you have to go back to the archives and check him out because they're really awesome segments. But in order to participate in the show tonight here in chat, let's go through the list. There are 8 different platforms, guys. We have Facebook, The Outer Realm, of course, Canada's Most Haunted. We've got UFO Paranormal Radio Network, United Public Radio Network, Joe Montalo UFO Undercover News on the flip side. I think I've got everything. Oh, UFO Gods and Extraterrestrials on YouTube, Outer Realm on YouTube, and again, UFO Paranormal Radio on YouTube. Those are your 8 platforms. I see we have people chiming in. Hey, Zuckman, Wayne, Ken, always nice to see you guys here. And we're just waiting for our guest to arrive. So get your questions ready. And it's going to be a good show. I'm really looking forward to it. It seems to be the week for it because, Constance Victoria Briggs was on last night talking, about the moon and how, there was a lot of different philosophers like talking about this back in the ancient times where there was no moon. How that happened. So that was last night's show. If you had missed it, go check out the archive on that one. It was really a lot of fun and full of information, and it definitely leaves you thinking. There's definitely something we can do here on the Outer Realm, and that is leaves us thinking. We learn from all of our guests. It's just like you guys do. We just hope to get something new as we go along. And sometimes we're the ones sharing information and enlightening them, which is really great because it's like more of a two-way street. So, I feel like you're giving something back. But I think tonight's going to be great. We're going to be talking about UFOs, one of my favorite topics, and extraterrestrials, again, one of my favorite topics, and of course, ghosts. Always happy to talk about ghosts, the spirit realm, things like that. So I think it's really cool. Oh, hey, Michael, from the mountains of North Carolina, batten down the hatches. Oh boy, preparation for an epic rain event. We just went through all that ourselves, so I'm really feeling for you guys. You guys stay safe over there. It's just getting crazy all over the place. My gosh. So Yeah, here we go. Yes, UFO ghosts, exactly. Missing our favorite like UFO chick. Where is she, man? She's been busy as well. So, miss her, Dolly. Miss you. Come on back. She's always very enlightening. You guys have to go check out her segment with Preston Dennett. That one's always fun. And Preston, I believe, is coming back on in. Oh gosh, let me look. Preston is back on November the 9th because I've had people asking about that. So November the 9th is the day, guys. Oh, and here we go. Hello.
Hi, Michelle.
Hi, how are you?
I am well, thanks. And you?
I'm okay. I'm okay. I can't complain, just been rained out for the last like 6 days. So I think we're like,
Oh,
yeah, first day of sunshine today in a
whoa.
week
Well,
at
that is
least.
kind of dark and depressing.
It can be, absolutely. It can be. So, glad that all is well. So tonight's, is going to be very interesting. I have been looking forward to it because, you know, it's all my favorite topic. I love talking just about anything that, you guys bring on the show. So, where would you like to start?
Well, maybe because we had talking about UFOs,
Hmm.
and just as so happens, I caught a glimpse of another one. So this is a strange thing in my life.
Oh,
Um, Saw my first one in '77, which was quite a high adventure.
hmm.
And then, only this year in May, I saw another one in my over my backyard, and just 3 days ago, 4 days ago, the same thing.
You
So,
know what they say about that, though, right?
no.
There's a theory that you don't just see a UFO. There have been reports of entire towns seeing UFOs, but not everybody.
Oh,
So it's believed that if you were already a contactee or an experiencer, this is why you're seeing them.
oh, well,
And
that's
they,
interesting.
right? So maybe, because let's just scrub your memory and stuff. So maybe you've been having these experiences your whole life. I found this out the hard way because it was the same for me. I never realized that some of the experiences that I had as a child were actually extraterrestrial experiences.
Oh, well, I'm interested.
Yeah, they follow family lines, things like
Mm.
that. So basically, your whole lineage. Chances are, if you talk to your parents to find out if they've had any experiences, your mom or your dad, or going back even their parents, and it's interesting.
I have not talked to my parents about it, but I did have this wild dream once about
Ooh,
it,
okay.
about my childhood, and it was a
Oh,
vivid dream. It wasn't a vision, and it wasn't a regular dream. It was a different sort of dream. Maybe I should start
hmm.
there.
Yeah, let's do that. That sounds exciting.
So a few years ago, I don't know how many years ago this was, maybe a decade or so, I had this dream. And in this dream, I was lying on my back on the floor of a spacecraft. And I knew I was in a spacecraft because my sister was lying on the floor next to me, and
Oh,
all the neighborhood kids were all lying in sort of this big circle around on the floor, all on our backs. And I knew all the kids there, but I couldn't move. It's funny. I knew that they were present,
mm-hmm.
but I wasn't able to um, look at them. I wasn't able to lift myself off the floor. And there were at least two people, two adults in the room, only they weren't human beings. And it was bright, and it was sort of clean lines. There weren't a lot of things around. It was very, I don't know, want to say modernistic. That's, it's
Right.
very, everything was very
Future,
clean lined,
maybe futuristic.
maybe futuristic. And as we were lying there immobilized, this female and was friendly enough, but she had this device in her hand, and she was walking around the greater circle of us over our heads and saying, "You won't remember any of this."
Th-
and
it- Am I
and
not right?
that's
Am I not right? Like scrubbing. This is what Michael says. He's a friend of Dolly's actually, and Preston Dennett, and he says they allow you to see them. They don't ever get mistakenly get seen.
I have not talked to my sister about this, mostly because I don't think that I don't know what she'd say.
Oh,
So,
I
but
don't
anyway, and I don't know.
know.
It was a dreams, but I can tell
How
you,
do you know it was a dream?
well, because I woke up, but it wasn't a dream. It was like I woke up and I told my wife. I was like, and you know, sometimes you tell your dreams, sometimes you don't tell your dreams. So I told this one because this dream was unlike other dreams because I was conscious in the dream. I knew I was with my sister. It wasn't like I was
Mm-hmm.
confused about that. I knew where I was,
Right.
and I wasn't scared, but I was. I don't know. Maybe scared isn't quite the right word, but
A
I
bit
was,
alarmed, curious.
yeah,
Were
alarmed,
you,
alarmed, wondering what was going
how
on.
old were you in this dream? Like, how old were
Oh,
you, do you think?
maybe somewhere around 7 to 10, pretty young.
Yeah, so that would have been like, where's my parents? Why am I here? What am I doing? I don't know. I have dreams like that even now that I've had throughout my life. I've come to learn they weren't dreams.
You come to what? I couldn't hear.
To learn that they were not dreams.
Ah, well, it seemed like
Well,
a memory to me at the time. That's what made it
right,
notable to me.
right. See? So maybe, just maybe, you are having, maybe you're an experiencer.
Well, I know I had another experience. What happened to me in 1977 was not erased from my mind. It didn't get lifted into any sort of craft or anything. But I was
Right,
with four other guys,
right.
and I don't know if you want to hear that. I think
Yes, of course.
yeah.
Yep.
So I was a camp counselor in this town called Perrysburg, Ohio. It's the
Hmm.
year I graduated high school. My buddy said, "I'm going out to Ohio to work at this camp. Why don't you come on out?" So I did. I got a job at the camp, and my buddy was there, and I ended up as the rifle instructor, and why that matters is because I was the only Boy Scout there with a merit badge. So I was like, I know how to handle a rifle, which meant I was responsible. Okay,
Right.
that's it. So I was a
Okay.
responsible
You're the
person.
responsible guy.
I
Okay.
was the responsible one, and
Okay.
so as the responsible one, I talked to the brothers. This is a Catholic camp, all right, on the campus of a Catholic
I
school.
know.
So
Yes.
I talked the headmaster into letting me take the camp car with these guys to go roller skating. So we did so we went roller skating this night,
Mm.
the next week we're like, okay, this is part of the plan. We're going to get the camp car and we're not going roller skating. We're going to go buy some beer. And so
So
we
you're not the responsible one.
no,
Okay.
I was not. I was so
Now we
but it was
know.
Stroh's Bohemian beer. I remember specifically because one of the guys had his ID, his fake
Right.
ID, I guess,
Right.
and it was
Right.
3.2 beer. So it
Right.
was this very low alcohol beer in Ohio at the time. And so we went out, we bought this beer, and somebody had some weed, and so I drove the camp car, and Ohio's flat. If you've never
So
been to Ohio,
snobby.
it's a flat place, but we're along the Maumee River, which is outside of Toledo somewhere, Perrysburg, Toledo, Bowling
Right.
Green in that area. So, but there is this park, and the park was only a few miles from the camp, but you had to drive up this windy road. It was like the only hill in the area. So get up on
Right.
this bluff overlooking the Maumee River, and it was parking lots and basketball courts, but we were the only car there, and I put on the cassette tape. We're listening to
The cassette. We really age ourselves when
oh,
we
I
talk
know. I
about
had a
that,
cassette tape,
right?
but the car did not even have a cassette player. Okay,
Oh
I had a
no.
cassette player. One of those, put the thing in and close it down and turn the button on. And I remember it was Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young because
Right.
I was listening to that's what I was listening to at the time. So,
Right.
so I popped the tape in and I turned it on, and somebody in the back seat, get these three guys in the back seat and some other buddy up in the front. And one of the guys in the back seat, I hear him pop a beer, and I'm like just about to light a bowl, and suddenly the parking lot illuminates like we're in the dark. Okay, we're in the dark.
Right.
The only thing is I don't know, is it a Bic lighter or not? It must have been a Bic lighter. The only
Big
light is
lighter.
the
We're
Bic
so
lighter.
just aging ourselves, right?
And
Oh,
but then the whole parking lot became illuminated. Like
right.
like suddenly somebody clicked on the lights, and
Right.
I'm like, and everybody in the car freezes. And I remember looking out of the window. I was the driver, so I looked out of the window, and I looked at the light. There's a light on a pole, but the light's not on. I'm like, okay, boys. I say, I think it must be the cops. We're all right. We're all Catholic school boys. We all went to Catholic school. We're from all over the United States, but we're all Catholic school boys. And so I'm like, hey, boys, it's the cops. We're busted. We got to give ourselves up. What are we going to do? So they all agree because we're trying to be good boys. And so we all get out of I said, all right, everybody, let's get out of the car. So we all get out of the car, and I open the door and I get out of the car. And I look behind the car, and everybody turns around and look behind the car because that's where you expect the cops to be. But there was nobody behind us. And it was at that point I realized the entire place was illuminated like daylight. And so we all kind of looked up at the same time, and it was like suddenly we were indoors and there was a ceiling over us. It was just this ceiling of light, and it was huge, and it was completely silent. There were no crickets, because there had been crickets, and we could still hear the river, but there were no insect noises.
Not the typical sounds you expect to hear when you're out in the dark and at night.
No, it was just, it all went silent. And
Right.
overhead, maybe 3 tree tops, like a tree and a tree and a tree stacked on top of each other. That's where this ceiling of light was. There's the entire ceiling of light. It was flat and it was white and it was light. And we were all drop jawed. And I remember like looking with my eyes down this way, trying to see the starlight. Where's the sky? And I look all this distance, and finally I can see the edge of this light, and then there's the sky. And we're like, what is this? And we all start talking. We're all looking around. We're all getting really excited. We don't know what we're looking at. And then it just starts to drift away like it had been stationary and silent, completely silent and flat. And it just starts to drift away. And get in the car. Let's all get in the car. So we got in the car, and it's moving very slowly down the hill. It's kind of going down. And so we get in the car and we turn the car around. I turn the car around and we go after this thing, and we wind our way. Because we're winding down the road and it's going straight. So we're getting further and further behind. And we get down to this road. It's like a small highway kind of thing, a two lane kind of thing. And it goes to the right. And we're going pretty fast. And I was like, everybody, guys, throw all the beer out the window. So we throw all the beer out the window. We threw the pipe, the weed, everything goes out the windows because we don't, if we get caught, we don't want to get caught with this stuff. So get rid of everything. We're going after it. So everybody throws everything out the windows, and I floor it. And now we're behind it, maybe, I don't know, 80, 70 feet, not very far at all behind it. And it's just above treetop level, and it's cruising, and it's going in a straight line. And I'm hanging out the window, and guys are hanging out the window. We're trying to look at this thing, and it's ahead of us, and we're faster and faster and faster. And it's the road that the camp is on. And this road goes right through the middle of it's a school campus, basically.
Right.
And it goes right past on the right-hand side of the dormitories and the administration office and the school room and all that kind of stuff, the gym. And on the left are the horse barn, the rifle range, the pond, those sorts of things, and cornfields, lots of cornfields, lots of soy fields. We go blowing through the middle of this. And I remember looking down at the speedometer because I was driving the camp car through the middle of the campus going almost 90 miles an hour. And I thought for sure someone was going to see us. And so we go blowing through the middle of the campus, and it's still ahead of us. And I've got it floored. It's this old, like a Ford LTD.
Right.
And
so it's like a boat.
It's like a boat. It was kind of floaty. And there was the river on our right-hand side, but we couldn't see it because it was behind the trees and some distance away. But all the roads are right angled. And so we get to this road that is a right angle turn to the bridge that goes into the Maumee. It was across the river. That's the name of the town. I was trying to remember what it was. It's the bridge to Maumee. And we get to this thing, and we're doing about 90 miles an hour, and it made in front of us, it made a right angle turn. Right. It was going 90 at this point, and then it was going 90 at that point. It never slowed down. It just went like a zip, zip. But see how my hand stops?
Yeah.
There was no stop. It just went, whoa, we're like, what? And whoosh, and now we're past it. And so I slammed on the brakes, and there was a cornfield to the left of us down kind of an embankment. And I spun the wheel, and into the air over the embankment, into the cornfield. The poor farmer, I don't even know what he thought the next day, but I wiped out a whole bunch of baby corn, like in this big slide skid. And I have the accelerated down because now I'm like, we're going to get stuck in the cornfield. So I'm trying to plow this rear wheel drive car through this cornfield. And we do this big skid, and I get the car around, and we get some traction, and we go straight and up in the air over the embankment onto the road, and I floor it. Now we're on the way to Maumee, to this road with this bridge on it, and it's waiting for us. It's like a quarter mile ahead of us, and it's just sitting there, 3 or 4 tree lengths up. It's just very stationary, and we're blowing up on it really fast. And as we got to it, it shot off like light,
like a bullet.
Yeah, well, faster. It was like light stretching, and we could still see the light where it was by the time it was gone out of the atmosphere.
Wow.
And so we stopped the car, of course, and we're all like, "What was that? We saw a UFO!" And there were corn stalks sticking out from underneath the car, so everybody's underneath the car trying to pull the corn stalks out so we don't get caught. And then we decided that we had done all these illegal things, and we were not going
only
to tell.
then decided that.
Well, no, we knew that we had done
Okay.
them. I should say, because we had done all these illegal things, we decided that we weren't going to tell anybody what we had
Right.
seen, because if we told people what we saw, we were going to have to explain to the camp, everybody there, what had happened. So we cut it. We shut
We
our
weren't
lips.
roller skating.
No, so after years and years and years go by, and I don't,
Right.
this is crazy talk for a lot of people. So I don't tell
Before
anybody. I don't tell.
Before you jump into like
Yeah.
too many years ahead, do you recall having any kind of missing time?
No, I don't remember any missing time.
Okay.
I don't, and maybe there was. I don't know. If
Yeah.
there was, it was a shared experience, and nobody missed it.
Yeah.
What I do
Right.
remember is that the guy popped open his beer. I remember distinctly hearing the beer pop open in the back, and
Right.
then the next thing you knew, the whole thing was illuminated, and he was still holding the beer. I was like,
Right.
um,
Right. Okay. Curiosity, because a lot of people who in situations like that will report some kind of missing time because they've actually been taken on board, and then you just kind of get dropped back in and continue like,
yeah, I've got a friend like that, who
see,
talks about that, but
not for you that
not
you
for
know of.
me, not that I know of. And
Right.
maybe when I was a kid, I don't, but I
Yeah.
can't, I don't really know. So,
Right. Okay. So
so I
now you can
decided not
fast
to.
forward.
Yeah, now I decide not to. We decide not to tell anybody.
Nothing.
We're not going to tell
Yeah.
anybody this. So
Right.
I know that it's tinfoil hat talk for a lot of people, or at least especially back then. So I never told
Mm.
anybody until the Pentagon, now 5 years ago, came out with the UFOs chasing the U.S. ships off the coast of San Diego. I'm like, okay, now I can talk about it.
Now
So
I can talk about it.
I make this little video, and I put it up on my channel, and it's like, yeah, I saw this thing with my friends,
Right.
but I don't remember who they are because we were all camp counselors, and it was a long time ago. I was 18, and so years go,
Right.
2 or 3 years go by, and I get this phone call, or this. How did it start? It started with an email. And this woman writes to me and says, "Are you Peter Panagore? Were you in Perrysburg, Ohio? I watched your video. I was there then. I know about this." I'm like, there was no woman in the car, I thought to myself.
Oh.
So what was that all about? So I write back to her, and she says, "No, I wasn't with you, but I'm friends of the guys who were with you."
So somebody talked.
Somebody talked, because it turns out she
You're
worked in the
not
kitchen at the
upset by the
camp.
fact.
Yes, somebody told them,
Okay.
because there was some kind of
Right.
buddy thing going on there, and and
Right.
and I didn't even really remember this woman. But I talked to these guys. I talked to 2 of these guys. They were both still very religious people and involved in the Catholic Church, and had a retreat center up in Canada. Invited me along, but I didn't go. But I found the guys.
Right.
That's the thing. I had this conversation with them about it.
Right.
So all this time, all that happened, and I kept my mouth shut about it for years and years. And then this past May, this other buddy of mine, a guy I went to grad school with, was visiting me. We're good friends, and we don't get to see each other very often. He lives far away, and so he came out to Maine, where I live, And my wife was away, so it was just the two of us at the house. And so we let a fire. I'm pointing to the behind me because that's where the fire pit is out there
Right.
behind me. There's a fire pit out there, and
Right.
so I got a stack of wood and I light up a fire, and we're sitting around, we're sipping something, and having a nice night. It's late May, and he says to me, "So I want to take some pictures. Why don't you do something silly?" So it's dark and there's can't firelight, so I do this something, just and I as I do that and I look up, like right in my field of view that I would not have seen had I not done that was this big huge white orb. And it was behind. So I'm looking through an oak tree with baby leaves on it, because it's Maine, so it's
Maybe,
it's
yeah,
May, but it's still kind of things are still coming out. So there's
sure.
this huge white orb in the sky, and above this white orb, which is moving very slowly, are clouds, and the clouds are going by, and there's wind, and so there's these thin high clouds, and they're blowing by in the wind, and behind the clouds, of course, is the moon. And it's, I don't know, half a moon or something like that.
Right.
So I've got
Right.
this three-layered effect going on. There's the moon, there's the clouds, there's this orb, and then there's this tree, and this orb is behind the tree. It's like, what is that thing? And I'm staring at it. I'm kind of looking through the tree at it, and I'm trying to figure out whether it's blinking, is it flashing, what's going on? How come because it's going behind the tree. And so finally it comes out behind the tree. I get up and I go on the deck. I get up a little bit higher. There's a deck on the end of our house. And there is this round white object in the sky below the trees, moving extraordinarily slowly, just sort of very steady, moving along in a straight line. And I thought, well, is that a satellite? You know how satellites move? They're
Hmm.
very straight. I pull up my
Hmm.
binoculars at night and I can see there's so many satellites in the sky. You can see them moving.
Yes, you can.
And it moved like that, but it was below the cloud level and it was big. I couldn't tell
Mm,
how big it was because I had nothing to judge it against, but it
right.
seemed like it might have been within a mile of us.
Hmm.
That's a guess. And
Right.
and so my buddy pulled out he had his camera in his hand because he was taking a picture of me. So he videotaped it. He got a little video of it, but he had a shaky hand, so
All
it
right.
looks like a ball moving around.
Right. Right.
Right, and so it looks like
Thanks
the
for
ball
that.
is moving, but that's not what
Yeah.
was happening. It was going very straight. And I
Yes.
remember thinking to myself, I should run inside and grab my binoculars. They're 3 rooms away.
Right.
And I thought, but if I do that, I might not see it. So I stay and I watch it.
But your buddy saw it
My
as
brother's,
well.
yeah,
Okay,
and
that's interesting.
he's a reputable person with
But has
a
he ever had any,
reputable profession.
right?
Right, right. So
And has he had any experiences himself
no,
that he knows of?
no, he has not.
It's
We
that
talked about
theory
that.
again that only experiencers can see them. So maybe he just
Maybe he
knows.
did. Well,
Mm,
he's a
just maybe.
mystical sort of person.
Then I would think yes.
Could be. So then, all right, so now it's this week or last week, and
Hmm.
I'm still in the same place I live in.
Right.
And now, of course, the sun goes down earlier because it's autumn, and so I
Yes.
step out on the little tiny front deck, and I look up, and there it is again. Only
Same
this
one.
time well, it looks the same to me. Only now I can see like it's a round ball, but it's got sort of like a flute on top, like a little tiny, like there's something sticking up out of it. But
Oh,
which
so that's interesting.
I don't know. And but so it's sort of like it's like it's like this. I'll show you this. So this is an ornament that a friend of mine made for us that I broke. It's a Christmas ornament. You can see that it's broken. Okay, it's sort of It's like, sorry,
I ruined it. So
right? And I ruined it, but I really like it, so I keep it. But it was round like this, only it wasn't blue; it was white. And
right.
this little nub up here, it was sort of from this line, and it kind of stuck up. And I thought, so it had this like chimney sort of thing on it, but it was solid white and against a dark sky with
Mhm.
stars in it, and it was a clear night, and it was much lower than the stars and much bigger than the stars. And I thought to myself, my binoculars, and it's moving across this field of vision. I've got this very large field of vision,
Mhm.
and it's in the middle of it, and it's moving very slowly. And I thought, well, this time I'm going to get my binoculars. I have enough time. They're maybe 5 feet from me now. So
Right.
I open the door, I go in the house, I grab the binoculars, I come outside, and it's gone. And I
Ah.
looked around, I was like, well, and I thought, if it's moving at this speed on this trajectory, it should be here. but
Mhm.
it's not there. We're
Gone.
so I don't know what happened to it. I don't know where it went.
Mhm.
But I know we are not alone. This
No.
universe of ours is vastly huge. What I was reading about the furthest star that the telescopes have ever seen. It's like 94 billion light years away or something like that.
It's
It's
crazy.
a very big place we live in.
Mhm.
And
Well,
go ahead.
no, I say if you look into ancient histories, just go back into the ancients, go back to biblical times. You can go in and see, um, people there having had extraterrestrial experiences. Enoch is your biggest example. Uh, they call him the very first abductee, right? Ezekiel has all kinds of experiences. Da Vinci had all kinds of experiences. There are paintings that go back, hundreds of years, hundreds, literally medieval
With the little
times.
spacecraft in them in the corner kind
Yeah,
of thing.
see? Exactly. Now look at all the cave art, that is like spans all over the world of UFOs. Just look at the different monuments, pyramids, especially down in South America. That's the more recent stuff compared to, let's say, the pyramids of Egypt. But there are evidence literally everywhere that um, depict they depict extraterrestrials. They depict different types of crafts. And how can we say that they don't exist?
Well,
And
can I show
people
you?
now, yes, I'm
Sorry, I'm
sorry.
sorry. I saw this
No, no,
crazy
you
thing
show
this
me.
week in the news. So in the
Okay.
news, of
You
course,
can screen share,
I
if you,
can. Well,
yeah,
let
you
me do
can.
that.
See,
Let me
wait,
set
look
this
at you
thing
at the
up.
bottom. You've got where it says share, screen share.
Okay.
You can do
Let me
that.
open this up and I will show you this image that
Okay.
I found to be pretty amazing. Okay, where is it? Let's see.
Okay.
I use I text things to myself. I don't know if anybody else does that.
I do it all the time.
Okay, good. So I texted this to myself,
Okay.
and I'm gonna make sure that let's see, screen share,
Yeah, you can share right off the bottom, and it
share,
asks you what area you want to go grab it from. Do that, and it'll come up on the screen.
screenshot,
Our
share
guests do it all the time.
screen, open preferences. There we go. Share this.
Okay.
Do you see it yet? Oh, wait a minute. Go to system preferences. Unlock the bottom left can. All right, so hold on.
Now, if you click share, I'm just going to try to walk through it. Go up
Okay,
to where it says share screen, and
I
then it'll ask you where you want to take it from, and just go
I
click on the file.
I did.
Yeah.
Share screen, click on the file, share.
Yeah. You go to where it says
It's
Chrome.
still
You're on
telling
Chrome. Go to Chrome tab or wherever it is you have this thing and grab it.
unlock the screen.
Or window or
Yeah, it's giving me trouble.
okay.
Because
Well
I've
then
got
maybe
yeah, it's all right.
okay.
I'll just show you on
Okay,
my
okay.
camera.
Sure. All right.
Because I can do that. That's right
Okay.
here. But this is I'll read it to you too. This
Okay.
is the official logo of, let's see. The logo in question is the official seal for the National Intelligence Manager Aviation, NIMA, who resides along with their staff within the Office of the National Director of Intelligence. U.S. Air Force Major General Daniel Simpson is the current NIMA commander and is also the executive director for the National Air Force of Intelligence. Okay, so yes, this is an official thing. That's what
Mm-hmm.
that's. So look at this. Where are you? I'm looking. I have to go all the way back and find you here. All right, so I'm going to hold up my camera to that right there. See that right there?
Yeah,
I
we
don't know if
see that. Yes, yes,
okay,
yes,
so
yes. I've
see
seen this before.
okay, you have seen this. So
I have
this is the
recently, yeah.
official logo. It's in the news. It's the official logo, and it's got these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 crafts
Yeah.
of the things that they
Yes.
track, and they track
Yes.
Russian advanced combat jets, drones,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
hypersonic,
Mm-hmm.
and aircraft and jet fighters and UFOs. I mean, it is right
UFOs.
there in the.
Yes. There it is.
He
Yes.
so here is
Yes.
the our and a lot of people have like and dislike the federal government for all sorts of various reasons. But the thing is, they don't do that kind of stuff unless they're serious about it.
I think so, because they've had their disclosures, and the United States was the last country to actually disclose. You look at places like we were just talking about this last night, Brazil and Peru, for example. That's a hot zone down in South America, and they have been encouraging their pilots, whether they're military or not military, to disclose and share information on sightings on UFOs or UAPs. And all the information gets collected and it goes to this center, this organization that is open to anyone who wants to go and research extraterrestrial life and all of these different crafts and experiences. And because they have them all the time. France has been the same. Russia has been, I mean, they disclosed like a long time ago. And I know that my producer, Joe Montaldo, and I do a show called The Gray Zone, and The Gray Zone Uncensored, I'll say the full name. And we did a segment one time, and we kind of laugh about it now because there's this whole, what they call CE5, Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind, where you can call them to you. And Russian scientists were doing this in the 70s and 80s. They said we didn't have to go to space because they would go to this one area near one of their Air Force bases, and they can call them forward, and they would come and they would study them, and they would like, they're like, why do we have to go to space? They just come when we call them. Wow. And now there's this entire movement going on where you can just go out there and, you know, go through the whole process and just call them forward.
I've read about that.
No,
I've seen
Dr.
videos.
Greer does it.
That's the guy I was thinking of.
That's right. Yeah. But, you know, you can actually do this on your own. And I'm sure he wouldn't appreciate me saying it, but I'll plug it. He does have an app also that people can purchase, and they can learn how to do it all based on his steps. He also has events where people can go out with him to the desert. It's quite costly. I mean, for me, I think $5,000 a person is kind of ouch, but you know, a lot of people have experiences, but a lot of people using the app have experiences. But this is like a telepathic thing. I could tell you for me, you know, when I started having more conscious experiences where I was remembering things coming through, it was literally just me saying, okay, I'm ready. And within a few days, this big flash of light came right through my bedroom. And that's one of the things that happens. And I was just like, oh God, what the hell was that? You know, because the house here is very high up. You know, we're like on the second floor, we're way up, and it's a very, very quiet street. So I'm looking at cars coming forward. I'm like, could the lights have come in? And nothing like that. It was just too high. So like, okay. So I just started watching for little signs. And I mean, at one point I had like a gray standing right in the bedroom beside me, like right beside the bed. I just looked like I'm not asleep. I'm just like, I just remember me saying, I think I'm ready. And then, you know, this guy standing here, and I'm just like, nope. And I roll over. Nope, not this night.
Pull the covers up over your head.
Yeah, I just rolled over the other way. And went, it's not going to be a thing right now. But it took me a while to really come to terms with the fact. I think people have a really big fear of extraterrestrials, and maybe rightly so with some experiencers. I personally, once I had an understanding, and once I started getting the signs and understanding the signs and downloads and visions, you know, I mean, it's just something weird about them coming in your room at night, or I'd have their hands on my head sometimes. I could feel that at night, and it's like, I don't like being touched when I'm sleeping. It's just weird ass things, you know.
You're creepy.
No, it just wigs you out, you know. But I realize they're either exchanging information, giving it to me, taking it, whatever the case may be. But I learned that I didn't have to be in fear. I'm not in fear, and it's a whole other experience. So
when you're calm,
Now I see signs. You know, the whole house will go really, 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 really dark, which is weird because there's a tower in this house, and there's a street light that beams in to the tower. It lights up the whole upper floor when it goes on. And you know that when that street light's on and you can't see your hand in front of your face, you know you got company. So, you know, you just kind of get used to things like that. And then it's like, okay, I've got company. Then it just got to the point where we're like, okay, well, clearly they don't like the lights. And we just left the whole wing of the house just dark. Just like, yeah, okay, whatever, man. It's like, I can't beat him, join him. It's kind of like that. But do you, like, how is it for you? Like, you obviously don't have a fear. I mean, you must be very intrigued to see a lot of this stuff. Have you had any kind of experiences to your knowledge, even I mean, you mentioned your dreams having two humanoid type beings in that what you call a dream. I do believe that maybe it's a memory. You had two humanoid beings. Like, does that whole thing wig you out, or you think you'd be comfortable if you saw an
Well,
extraterrestrial?
I'd be willing to go.
Oh,
That's what I tell
see?
myself. I was like, "You're gonna come and take me into your super advanced futuristic spacecraft?
There we go. I'm down. Let's do it. Right.
Take
Right.
me for a
Right.
ride." Um,
But I
but
like that.
yeah.
I like that.
So some people are afraid.
Yeah.
People are afraid of what they don't know. I kind of think about it as there's so many galaxies and so many planets and so many civilizations. Some are bound to be Borg-like, to use a Star
Sure.
Trek sort of,
Yeah, sure. Why not?
and some are not. And so some
Right.
probably are friendly and some aren't. Like like people you live in
Like
your
people.
town with, right people, right?
Sure. Yeah,
Um,
I
so
agree.
I'm generally not too ups. I'm always thrilled. I'm always sort of chasing it. Like, where's my binoculars? Can I go and get a
Right.
closer look? So one day
Right.
I get the story of this guy from Harvard. So I live in Maine, and my friend who was abducted, who was also so I spent 15 years in television, and this guy was one of the weather guys in our local market, and I got to know
Right.
this guy, and he has a friend who worked for the Harvard Smithsonian Astrophysics organization in Cambridge, Massachusetts, and he made this communication with this guy. His name is Rudolf Schild. And Rudolf Schild was a physicist. He's still around. He's retired, but his big discovery in physics had to do with I think it's black hole radiation magnetics, something like
Right.
that. I'd have to look it up to be sure exactly what it is. But anyway, so
Mm,
one of the things I told my buddy was that I thought that astrophysicists were the theologians of the 21st century
right.
because they're asking the unadorned question about why things are.
Hmm.
That's the question the theologians used to ask,
Right.
but now the physicists are asking it. It's mathematics, and so the word got back to Rudolf Schild, and this is maybe 10 years ago. And so Rudy invited me and my friend down to Cambridge for like 5-hour conversation in his kitchen.
Mm.
It was lunch and then a glass of wine and then a cup of coffee and then a drive home. But during this conversation, among the many things that we talked about, he said that he and some of his peers think that there's they're observing a correlation between near-death experiencers, which I am, near-death
Hmm.
experiencers and extraterrestrial contact. And he thought that
Oh,
it was fascinating that I had these two things. Now, so
yeah.
one
And
of the
not just two things. You've had at least two NDEs,
I've had the
and
two
pretty
NDEs.
freaking spectacular to boot. So,
Yeah, they were life changing. So
go back to the other 3 or 2 shows for that, guys. Just
um,
lots for that. Lots
So,
of
but
info.
he was saying that
Yeah.
he thinks that there's some sort of that there's some sort of correlation between NDEs and extraterrestrials.
Okay.
He doesn't know what it is, and I don't either. I'm just bringing that in as part
Right.
of the conversation.
Right.
Um,
But
and
that's
that he,
fascinating because you have had both,
I have,
you know. So
yep.
your earliest recollection, I guess that's the earliest memory or dream that you had was with you and your sister being in, with other kids, which is kind
In
of
my
interesting
neighborhood,
in your
who I'm,
neighborhood.
who I actually still know some of these guys.
Do they remember the same? Like,
I
like,
haven't had the courage to ask them,
oh,
frankly.
so you don't know if you all shared in that memory
No,
or not.
I don't know because
Ah,
I'm as a near death experiencer, I'm already suspect
right,
among a certain population. And I don't know who do I ask? And
right.
and I know I'll get up the courage to ask my sister. I should at least ask her.
I would be
Um,
curious to see if both of you or others just shared in that experience. If you're both sharing in it, that's I think then you're definitely more than a dream. Here is Dolly. Hello, Dolly. I just want to break out in song every time I see you, Dolly. So she says, advanced people are advanced in all aspects, including morality. Dolly would know. Dolly is a big time conscious experiencer. So you have to definitely get to know Dolly and all of her experiences. Mind blowing. So psychic experience conjoins all contact.
hmm.
Yes, I absolutely believe that. Um, yes, but it would be interesting for sure. And I think it would be interesting if you contacted or rather asked your family members.
I'll ask my sister and a couple of kids in the neighborhood. I know that two of these people, we're all grown up now. We're all adults, and one of them, I know he was. I saw him there. I know that one kid was there. He was my neighborhood, one of my neighborhood friends at my age
Right,
group.
right,
Um, there were a lot of us in that room too. There was, I
right.
don't know, 10 of us or more.
So it's
Um,
just like a mass experience, which is really, but the fact that you're all lying in a circle on your backs and you see these two humanoid figures that are not like human beings, at least
but they
not
were
as we know
beautiful.
them.
They were
Yes,
they were good looking.
right. Can you describe them?
They were there. Everything was sort of white. It was very clean. It was like being in
Hmm.
a clean space, and they were wearing clothes. The clothes were
Hmm.
skin tight, and they were white, and kind of like not like a uniform, like a military uniform, but uniform in that they all kind of wore the same thing.
Right,
Um, there was some
right.
variation, but they were men and women. There was at least a man and a woman, and I can sort of see a third person off to the side.
Hmm.
Um, but then they were tall because I was a kid, so everybody was tall.
Right,
But they were tall and they were
right,
slender and they were good looking. And
right.
and she spoke to us without language. So she telepathically told us that
Telepathic.
she didn't move her lips when she said, "You're not going to remember any of this."
Great,
I heard it
thanks.
inside my head, and
Right, right.
then had this device in her hand and kind of went around the circle of all of us. And I remember looking up at her as it was passing over me, and I was scared when she was doing this. I was scared that they were doing something to me that I could not do anything about.
Right.
I was immobilized, but I wasn't frightened. I was like, "What's she doing? What's she doing?" Alarmed is the word you use. That's the word. What's she
Alarmed,
doing to
yes.
us?
Right,
Um,
right. Well, I mean, you're a kid,
so
you're not like your parents, you're the whole neighborhood kid. Just kind of wondering how this happened.
right.
But I'd be a little bit alarmed as well. But do you find, like, I found when I started remembering back to some of my experiences as a child, especially around your age of 7 when this happened, I was always looking to the stars. I would spend hours just looking up and looking at stars. We saw crafts all the time. So did my father. So did my mother. I find
Oh,
out my mother's father he ended up with a telescope. He was always looking to the stars. So I have both sides of my parents,
mm,
like both sides, having all of these experiences. And I'm thinking, coincidence. I don't believe in coincidences. So that, it's a lineage thing. This I do know. So in speaking with my parents, have you guys had experiences? Yes. So did my grandparents, especially on my mother's
mm.
side. Just kept going back, back, back. But when I learned about my lineage, I'm like, this makes sense.
Hmm. I'm
So
not
I
able
don't
to
think
ask my dad, but maybe I could ask my mom. But
curious. Yeah, but kind of hard to approach some things, you
well,
know.
eh, I,
How do you think she would take
I'm
it if you
well,
said you had
well,
experiences?
she would love me no matter what I said, but,
Right.
um,
Of course.
but I know that as a near-death experiencer,
Mhm.
my family, they love me, but nobody's read my book, and this is
They don't
international
wanna go there,
bestseller.
do they?
Mm-mm.
But you come from, like, a pretty staunch, religious
W
family as well, right? With the belief
well,
system.
they did they were. My dad,
Right.
passed away mostly agnostic,
Oh, wow,
fairly
that's really interesting.
with me at his side, and
Yeah.
he really didn't understand
Mhm.
um, me. after I died. So, but
Right.
so the religion was kind of cultural. We were all raised in it, but
Right.
everybody sort of fell away in some way or another over the years.
Oh
It's
no.
mostly it's
Yeah.
mostly that
Yeah.
my family is pretty intellectual. I have a pretty intellectual family, and
Right.
this is not a reasonable thing. So
That makes sense. So it does. It is like right out there. So they'd be sort of looking at you going, "Oh, here's something else. He's got
here's
another weird
something
thing up his
else.
sleeve."
That's
Right.
right.
I guess the NDE wore off, so now we've got to get
Right.
on to something a bit
Something
different.
else. It's crazy guy.
Oh,
Um,
yes, yes.
so
S-
go ahead.
So that's yeah, that's kind of wiggy. Like, so let's branch off from there. You I mean, I highly recommend that you definitely go a little deeper with it, because I mean, if you're having all these experiences, I'm thinking you've had them for a long time. I'm thinking you'll continue to have them. Maybe you just need to go out at night, sit down, and just call them.
I will give that a try because just last night I was sitting out on the front deck with the binoculars looking at the
Where are
stars. Because
you? Right? Yeah. Right.
uh, and we
Right.
don't have a lot of light pollution where I live. I live in a rural place, and
You're
so
lucky.
there's a
Yeah.
lot of galaxies. Our galaxy shows up every night.
Right.
But yeah, I'll give that a try.
I grew up north, clear skies. And see, that's where you see so clearly. But so I mean, I find myself, because I've had a lot of experience even with spirits in the spirit realm, and I find that the two go hand in hand. And I've come to learn after a couple of decades of being in the field of the paranormal that things, even with myself thinking were paranormal events growing up, I realized they weren't. I mean, I had paranormal events, but I think a lot of it was also ET
Hmm.
contact. And I got obviously never been uncomfortable with it. You just tend to forget, I think, as an adult. But as a child, I mean, like I said, I wouldn't be looking to the stars. I still look to the stars. I still look to them. I've always looked to the stars. I've always just been, intrigued with it and like looking for something, but, not allowed to remember everything. So it's like, what am I looking for? you know, but helping people in the paranormal, I have realized that a lot, at least half of the people I've assisted have had ET contact. And sometimes
Hmm.
their issues have not been paranormal, they have been extraterrestrial.
Hmm.
So, um, let's talk about the paranormal a bit. Let's talk about ghostly experiences. Have you had any of those?
I.
Because we're coming to October, coming
Mhm.
to spooky month. So let's just delve a little bit.
Yes, I definitely have, and I
Okay, good.
as a near-death experiencer, that's a pretty common thing to see the dead.
Yes.
I'm not. It's not a common thing in my life. I've
Hmm.
seen only a couple of times. So the biggest event that happened to me, I'm a parade stilt walker. So
Oh,
I
nice. I have a friend who does the same thing. I love it.
it's a shtick, and
Yeah.
it's really fun. And
Yeah.
so I just do local parades and I walk.
Yeah. That's
So
talent, man. You're way up there.
well, you're way up there, that's for sure. There's one rule with stilt walking, and that is don't fall.
That's
Um,
right.
and my stilts are if people had their someone come in and put mud on their walls, they have sheetrock put up and taping and mud,
Yes.
or
Yes.
painters, they've got stilts with feet on the bottom. My stilts don't have feet on the bottom. They come down to a post. They're theater stilts.
Right.
So
Right.
so I was doing this parade at this place called the Pumpkin Fest. It's a
Nice.
pumpkin fest parade. The whole, the town has this big pumpkin thing, and
Sure.
people come in from all over. But I'd never done this parade. It's up the river from me, but I'd never done this parade, and I was late. There was something going on. I threw my stilts in the car, got my costume, a top hat covered with stalks of corn, and so I look like a scarecrow, and I'm late, and I don't know where the parade begins. So I pull out my iPad and I look up where the parade begins, and I was like, the Pumpkin Fest parade, and I click it, and the first thing that comes up is a news report, and this news report is Shriner dies at Pumpkin Fest parade. I'm like,
Good
oh,
times.
so I
Wow.
read this thing, and Shriners, at least where we are, have these little go karts.
Oh,
They all
yeah,
wear
they
their
do. Yeah.
fezzes,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
they
They
do
do.
the go kart thing.
Yeah.
Excuse me. And so in this town, there's a salt river. And so this salt river is a short river, and it's all salt water and has a very high tide. Like, it goes through this very narrow channel, lots of water. It goes to this very narrow channel in this river where there's a lot of water flow. And there's this short bridge between these two towns.
Right.
So I'm on my stilts. I read this article about this Shriner who's on this bridge in his go-kart, gonna do so there's people on the sidewalk. There's like two lanes and there's sidewalks. Kids are sitting there, and there's a ramp. And he's going for the ramp. He's going to do a little jump, only he miscalculates. He only gets two wheels on the ramp, and he flips over and hits his head doing, however fast he was going, smacko. And it's I'll leave out the description, but it was a terrible thing.
Right.
And everybody's horrified, and he dies right there. It's like 2 years before. And so I read this article like, whoa, yeah. But where's the parade begin? So I find out where the parade begins. I drive there. I get there. I'm on time. I'm doing this parade. I'm having the best parade I've ever had, which means that the kids are loving me. I'm there for the children. They're running through my legs. I'm handing out lollipops. We're having a great time. And it's a great parade. So I come down the hill, and I get to the bridge, and I can go really fast. I've got a long stride, so I can cruise. And when I was younger, I could jump on them and spin and kick and do all these kind of fun things, and
without throwing out your back.
So I would always make a chiropractic appointment for the next morning.
Yeah. As you get older, it's like, oh, better not try that one again.
I'm not doing that. And so I'm in the middle of the road in the double yellow line, going, it's just trucking down. And as I get to the bridge, I look to the middle of the bridge, and there's a couple of my neighbors. They live down on the point down there. And I was like, I'm going to do something fun for them. So as I cruise down, I have all this speed. With the stilts, if I can pivot on one foot, take all of that momentum and push in another direction, sort of like that UFO thing. Only I have to stop, but I take all that power and I put another direction. And then I do that. I pivot on one foot. I step 3 steps toward them, and I then jam my stilts into the ground, drop my butt down, and stop like right fast, like really fast. And it's a little scary for people, but it's super fun because they realize it's totally safe. Only when I do this time on this bridge, as I stop, I'm maybe 2 feet in front of the sidewalk where they're sitting, which is up against the railing, which is the river. And as I stop, my right stilt breaks. Boom.
Oh.
And so I had made a mistake. So my stilts have these heavy lag bolts that run through the middle of them, on which are pivoting platforms. And it's all these washers and nuts and bolts. And I couldn't get the right size lag bolt 2 days before. So I got one size down.
Right.
And so, but there's a lot of pounding on these lags. Boom, 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 boom. And so I slam into this, and this lag bolt shears off. Boom. But I have all this momentum going forward. And so, but I also have these straps. I'm duct taped into my stilts, but I've got straps so that if it breaks, I slide down my stilt. Preparation.
Right.
But as I do this, I stop short, the stilt breaks, and my momentum, I see myself. I suddenly have this vision of myself. I pop out of myself. And as I pop out of myself, I see myself going over the railing. I see myself going over the railing into the river with my stilts on and my costume. And there was no way I was going to survive, because my stilts are huge and heavy. And
that would have taken you right down.
I would have, and it was this tumultuous flow going through there.
Sure, I'm just thinking another NDE.
Well, that's the worst thing. As I'm doing this, I'm thinking to myself, because I was on television at this time in our local market, and I'm like, oh my God, this is going to be on the freaking news. It's going to be like Daily Reverend Peter Panagore dies stilt walking in a river accident in a spectacular way in front of this crowd on the same spot where this other guy dies. All this is like inside of
something wiggy with the spot, maybe.
I'm in the same place. And so I see myself, I literally see myself. I can see the water. I'm like seeing the water coming toward me, and I pop out of myself. So I have this out of body experience. I pop out of myself. I see this happening, but I also see me, and I see behind me this amorphous gray cloud shape.
Okay.
It's an amorphous gray shape, and as I see this, I pop back into my body, and instead of going over the edge, I go straight to the ground. Boom! And I land, and I twist my ankle, and I'm lying on the ground in front of my neighbors. They're horrified. Everybody's horrified, and I'm okay. I'm okay. I'm okay. I'm okay. And this buddy of mine comes running over. And he runs over and he's like, Peter, and he's like, "You're okay, are you okay? I saw this happening." And he and this other young man, one of his proteges, a lacrosse player, this other young man runs to the other side of the road, pulls off his shirt, and he's ready to go over the railing. My buddy's on this side. He's ready to go over the railing. That's why he's next to me, to go in to rescue me. They had already decided they're going to go in after me.
Mhm.
And I'm like, no, George, I'm okay. I'm okay. And I'm really embarrassed. Okay. I'm really embarrassed. I scared all these people. I didn't mean to
Mhm.
do that. I put on my stilts, and I pick up my stilts, and I walk kind of, I got a little twisted ankle, and I walk toward, I'm okay. I'm pretending I'm fine, and carry my stilts up the hill. And George walks with me. We go to his car because it's close. And we get to his car, and I'm sitting in his car, and he's, what happened? What happened? What happened? And I'm telling him the story, and my phone rings. And I answer, and I'm like, "Oh, it's this woman who I counseled for 2 years." This woman, a near-death experiencer, had been hit by a car on her bicycle, broke all of her bones,
Oh,
ended up as a biology teacher, got her doctorate at Columbia, is an EMT. She's like this, as an Iron Woman. She's this superwoman now. But
right.
but but at the time that I'd met her, because she was an EMT, she was, and a near-death experiencer, she was struggling with seeing dead people all the time. And so
Not surprised.
she became suicidal with this because she wasn't able to talk to anybody about it. Nobody. You
Right.
can't talk to the firefighters, the EMTs, or her family. They all thought she was crazy. But she's a brilliant person.
Mhm.
So suddenly, and I counseled her for 2 years, because she was like lots of NDEs. Many of us have
Yes.
periods of suicidality. And so she went through this period of suicidality that I counseled her through. But I hadn't talked to her in a year. And my phone rings, and I say, Hello?" She said, "What just happened?" I
Ooh.
said, I said, "What do you mean? What just happened?" I got my buddy George. He's sitting there. I'm
Okay,
like,
skip it. I didn't know what you're talking
I don't
about.
know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
And so she says, "There's a guy here. He just showed up, and he wanted to say he didn't mean it." I said,
Oh.
"Is he
So
a?" I look at my buddy George. I'm like, "Is he a dead guy?" She's like, "Yeah." He
oh.
came to me to say that he didn't mean it, and so I and that he thought you could see him. That's what he saw you, and he thought that you'd be able to see him. He'd been apparently stuck on this bridge, and And so he
Oh.
then, and then so I'm like, I'm kind of pressed, George. Oh, I don't know what's going on, George. It's some crazy person on the phone with me, or not. I didn't really say that, but I'm like kind of quieting George down a little bit. And he takes me into my car, and I drive home, and as I drive home, this entity is in my car with me. There's like a not like a person, like a physical person, but there is a
No, but
person in
he's
my car.
following you around.
Yes, and then he kinda sticks with me. He kinda stays with me for days. Um, I can always
'Cause
sense
you
his
got off the
presence.
bridge. He's trying
I
to
got off the
see
bridge, and
maybe
so
you're way off the bridge. I don't
I called my friend up. I said, "What do I do? This guy, he's sticking with me." And at first, I thought he pushed me. That's what really, I was like, I thought, when I finally, George was gone, and I'm talking to her on the phone, it's like, I thought this guy pushed me. It felt like to me he pushed me. I thought he was trying to kill me. That's what I thought. That he was trying to shove me off the bridge. But really what he did is he shoved me down. He shoved me to the ground, which is why I did not go over the bridge. Because every single person
Oh.
there, including my buddy and his protege, and all of the people there, they all
He
thought I was
saved
gonna
you
drown.
essentially.
He saved me. And
Wow.
and so I asked her, I said, what do I do with this guy?" She said, which is the advice that I give everybody now when they're in this kind of situation. She said, "Just tell him to turn to the light. That's it. Just
Yeah.
tell him it's okay to go home. He doesn't have to stay here. just tell him to turn to the lights. So I did, and off he went.
Mm, yeah, sometimes
It's
it's just they don't realize. Sometimes I think there's a theory that you get bounced out of your body so quick you don't even realize what's happening. There's so many theories, of course, but because you kind of wonder, why was he stuck on the bridge?
why was he stuck on the
Was
bridge?
he
Yeah.
aware that he was dead, according to your friend?
I
Was he
think he would.
still
I think he did know that he was not who he was before, because he
right?
thought that I could. He thought that I could see him when no one else could, and I
So he was
did.
aware.
Yeah, he was
Yeah.
aware and stuck there for some reason. I don't know why.
Yeah, it's a curiosity as to, especially if you've passed on. Um, you know, People stay back for many reasons when they're passed. I think it depends. Sometimes you die suddenly, you don't realize you're dead. Sometimes it's unfinished business. You need to reach out to somebody, especially people who have been killed or in accidents who haven't had a chance to say goodbye, or they want people to know this person killed me, or there's a lot of different reasons. Trying to get them to move on sometimes it's not so easy. Sometimes we're attached to places, sometimes you're attached to people, things. It's really, really tough to figure it out. And I think a lot of it is also mindset. If you were raised to believe that, for example, a suicide, that you don't have the right to take your own life. Only God has the right to take your life. You take your own life, you're going to hell. Well, they're going to stick back and take their chances and stay here. That I think I'm going to just hang back. I'm not going to that other place. So I think sometimes it is a belief system, and I've come across many spirits where I've said, no, your God is loving and forgiving. You can go home. You
That's
don't
where I'm
have to,
at.
yeah, you don't have to stay. It's ridiculous, because in reality, they stay behind because they're still in the same mindset that they were when they took their own life. You have to think, how low are you feeling in that moment where you can take your own life? Just because your body no longer works, it doesn't mean your essence, which holds all of your emotions and your feelings and your memories, it doesn't mean that goes away. You stay in that moment. I had a family member who passed. She took her own life because her mother had, and she missed her mother so much, and she knew, because she had seen her mother. She goes, I know she's not moved on. I know she's stuck. She took her own life to go be with her mother,
Whoa.
to help her, to save her somehow, but her mother wouldn't leave with her. So we went in and grabbed both of them and move them on. We went in and we looked for them and we moved them on. So, there's so many different reasons as to why they hang back. But I find it intriguing. Like, spirits will save lives all the time. But the fact that he followed you, obviously there was something about you that, yes, you could see them. To a spirit, it's believed that a medium or people with a gift of sight is that light in the darkness. So for them, they
Mm.
gravitate towards that light, and then they just wait for direction. I think children have a really hard time with this because they're natural little psychics, and
Mm.
they can't cope with, spirits coming to them, adult spirits coming to them for guidance. They don't know what to do or what to say, and they get plagued with it.
Mm.
So,
Sort of like that movie, Sixth Sense.
yes, yes, it's exactly like that. Just trying to be like, just like, go away. They don't realize that. No, just tell them to move on. Like, they're kids, right? So it's fascinating. So there we go, as Tamara would say, being the light in the swamp. Yes, exactly like that. So somebody's late, Tamara. So late to the party. So that was a pretty incredible experiences. And have you had experiences as a child or anything like that? Or did you?
I did. The experiences when I was a child were different than those. I had mystical experiences when I was a kid. I started very young, and
Mhm.
there was an entity, a light being that would be sometimes in my closet, but
Light
not,
beings. Interesting.
but sort of standing. in the middle of my clothes that were
Oh,
hanging
that's
in the
crazy.
closet.
Yeah. You
But
can't see us hiding
right,
the clothes. Yeah.
and it wigged me out as a kid, but they
Yeah.
were. It turned out that there was no malicious intent. I
Right.
could just see them. It 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 began that's what began a whole long series of things.
Mm-hmm.
I could tell you. I don't know that I want to get into that whole length of story unless you want me to, but because it's hard. It's
I
hard for you to
always
know.
say,
All right, so
as a guest, it's your gig, man.
so when well, I'll come back to that.
Okay.
Let me tell you the one
You,
other more recent little
okay.
ghost
You
story, and
take it where it
I'll
goes.
swing
Yeah.
around to
Okay.
that. So
Okay.
I was out in Seattle for a couple of different speaking events, and I rented an electric one-speed bike to try it out. And so I took this one-speed bike, and it was great. And on there's this huge bridge in Seattle that is, uh, I don't know, must be 4 or 5 stories up. And
Wow.
you normally drive across it, but I was bicycling across it. So I'm bicycling across this bridge, and as I bicycle, it's got a bend in it. And as I bicycle, I've got this more and more weighty feeling, like I'm getting more and more nervous. And I am not afraid of heights.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a stilt walker. So
Right.
looking over the edge is not this doesn't give me woozies.
Right.
But I have this anxious feeling that's growing in me, like there's something wrong, there's something wrong, there's something wrong. I don't know what it is. And as I come around the corner, it gets more and more intense until I get to the spot where I look down, and there is a cross of flowers wired to this railing that's
Mm.
next to the sidewalk, and then there's a bunch of flowers attached to it. So there's all this like a memorial. It's a
Mm.
memorial. I'm like, this is a memorial. And so I
Right.
stop, and I have this distinct feeling that somebody jumped, and
Um,
I decide that this person, it feels to me like this person is still there. So I do the same thing you just said. I sent them home. I was like, you don't have to stay here. You can turn
mhm.
to the light and you can go. And then there was this experience. I had this experience of lightness, um, unburdened,
Right.
and off I went on my bike. So
Right.
not many experiences in my life, but uh, so when I was a kid, um, I had this event happen, and it started out with this entity in the closet that I could see. We had moved into a new house, and I had this room by myself, but my baby brother, who was just born, was going to move into the room with me. And before he moved into the room with me in his crib, the closet door was open one night, and I could see this entity inside the closet, and it was illuminated. It was brighter than anything else in my dark room, and it was a human shaped thing. But it was only scary in that it wasn't like attacking me or being monstrous. It was only scary because I didn't know what it was and what was
But it
going on. I was a
was,
little kid.
it's intrusive, and they're in your space
Yeah.
where you're supposed to feel the most comfortable and the safest.
So, mom, close the closet door,
Yeah.
close the closet door, close the closet door, close the closet door. What's wrong? I said, there's somebody in there. There's nobody in there, Peter, but I'll close the closet door. So that is all this tumult about my brother moving in.
Mhm.
And so I'm sort of upset. And
Mhm.
then my brother moves into the room that same week. But what happened is that the I had because my brother moved into the room, my grandparents felt bad for me as a kid, and for my birthday, they gave me a puppy. So
Aw.
I have this puppy, and he's my little loving puppy, and my brother lives in the room, and I love this puppy, um, and I was sitting in my room, and I don't know where my brother is. He must be downstairs with my mom on this particular Saturday morning, and I hear my dad get in the car, and I hear him back up, and then I hear him stop, and I hear the door slam, and I hear him say, "Ah!" I hear my dad scream, "Ah!" And I'm like, "What
Oh.
the heck?" And I'm just a little kid. And so I look out the window, and my dad is next to the car, and the driveway's right below, and he goes behind the car, and he picks up my dog, and
Ah.
he had run over my dog. And I
Oh.
watched, and he's like, "Ah, ah," and I'm looking down, and my dog is dead in his arms. I'm like,
Oh.
"Ah." So I go downstairs, and I'm all broken up, and we go off to the vet, and of course, the dog is dead, and there's nothing you can do, and I'm all full of tears, and my dad is so remorseful, and my mom's all upset, and the whole house is in a tumult, and
Right.
so I have this terrible, terrible day, and
Right.
I go to bed that night, and my mom comes in and hugs me, and my dad apologizes, and but I'm a wreck. And as I fall asleep. My brother's in the room. I fall asleep, and then I awake to hear my name being called, and I open my eyes. I hear Peter, Peter,
Right.
Peter, come to me. And I open my eyes, and I
That's
can
creepy.
see in my room. My room is illuminated, but it's all in like a sepia tone. All these
Right.
shades of copper and brown.
Right.
But there's no light in my room. My mom had left the door open a crack with the hall light on, but it was everybody had gone to bed, the hall light was off. My brother's in the room, he's sleeping, but I can see everything in the room, and I thought, "Well, this is weird." And I keep hearing this, my name being called, and I recognize this voice. I don't know who it is, but I recognize the voice, and I hear love and compassion in the voice, and it's calling me. So I sit up in bed, and as I sit up in bed, I look down, and I'm still lying down in bed. And I looked down, there's my boy body is in the bed, and I'm sitting up, and I'm like, "Oh, well, this is interesting." And I look down, and I have feet, and it keeps calling to me, and so I stand up, and my feet don't touch the floor. And the voice says to me, "Come to me, come to me, come to me, Peter, Peter, Peter." And so I move to the door, and I reach to the handle of the door, my hand goes right through it.
Hmm.
And now I can't open the door, and it laughs at me in this sort of playful voice and says, "You don't have to open the door, you just have to walk through it." So I believe it because I know this voice, it's this loving voice, and so I walk through the door, and I'm out in the hallway, and the hallway's all sepia tone too, it's all illuminated, but
Hmm.
the overhead light is off, and I move to the top of the stairs, and the stairs have like a right angle turn, and there's a little landing where there's a bigger stair.
Hmm. Right.
And I walk to the edge, and I look down because I can hear this voice calling me, and there's a baby elephant there. And this baby elephant is dressed in mirrored clothing, like it's got clothes on. It's an elephant, but
Crazy.
it's
All
got
right.
elephant clothes on,
Right.
and it's looking at me,
Babar.
and it's right like
Mhm.
Babar, only it's dressed in not in a tie and a
Yeah.
jacket, but in like what you might.
Right.
But I was
Yeah.
also this. So I set the scene here. I grew up outside of Boston, and I'd never seen an elephant in my life, and
Yeah.
especially when dressed in Indian clothing.
Right.
Um, so I'm looking down at this
That's
elephant, and
very
it looks up
interesting.
at me. It's small elephant, but this elephant it's really old. It looks young to me, but it also has this very old feeling to me, and its eyes are pure black. There's no pupils in them, and it looks at me, and when it looks at me, all I feel is compassion, and it weighs me down with its trunk. It's talking to me telepathically, and I float down the stairs, and it's calling my name. And as I look at it, I sort of lift up and flow into its eye. I flow into its eye, and now I'm inside it, and I'm inside this vast darkness that is full of kindness and compassion. It's just overwhelming with this ancientness, this
Hmm.
power, this I don't know,
Essence.
wisdom, essence. And
Yeah.
then I flow back out again. I mean, it's like it's the size of the cosmos I'm in the middle of. And then I
Right.
flow back out again. It showed me itself, and then it says to me, I want go outside. I want you to go. And because it is so loving, and I know this entity, I can't tell you if I was asked as a boy, I couldn't tell you who or what it was, but I knew that it knew me, and I knew it, and it knew that it loved me. And
Hmm.
so it motions with its trunk to go down the stairs. So I float down the stairs. It's with me, but still upstairs on the stairwell, but it's also
Hmm.
with me, and it's speaking to me inside my head. Keep going, go outside. So I pass through the doors. I pass through the door and the screen door, and I go down the porch, down the concrete walkway, out into the street. And we live in a small city outside of Boston, and it's
Hmm.
up against an apple. It's not our apple orchard, but it's an old, overgrown apple orchard, hundreds
Hmm.
of acres of woods, and so it's kind of the edge of the city, and there's no traffic, and I'm out in the middle of the street, and I knew I was breaking the rules. I knew that my parents would be really upset at me if I was outside of the house at night, but I was felt so safe with this entity talking to me, and it said, "Look up at the stars." And so I look up at the stars. There's the stars again. Look up at the stars, and I see. the starlit sky, and as I look, I'm transported into it in a flash, just like this overwhelming movement of me and this expanse of it, and it shows me in infinity. It shows me a glimpse of infinity, and
Mhm.
it scared me. It was overwhelming for me. I couldn't handle it.
How
And
old were
it's
you?
6,
Oh,
5.
so it was before the dream.
It was before the dream,
Mhm.
and in the instant of my fear, I'm back in my body again, and I sit up in my room, and I'm in the pitch dark,
Mhm.
but I still have this feeling of love. And there's this little elephant in the house, and so I got out of bed, and I went out in the hallway, and I went into the bathroom, because if my parents heard me, I was like, "Well, I was just going to the bathroom." But the first thing I did is looked at the stairs, and the elephant wasn't there, so I hung out in the bathroom for a little while, and then I searched the entire house. I searched my sister's room. I looked at my parents' room very quietly, made sure they were asleep. I went through all of the rooms of the house, and I'm a little kid. I'm afraid of the dark. I even went down into the cellar and clicked on the light and went down and looked all through the cellar for this thing, and it wasn't there. And then I waited for it. I sat by the stairs for some period of
Mhm.
time till I got too sleepy. So my all of this is to say this is that from early childhood, I've had all sorts of strange experiences, and I used to I learned as a child not to talk about them, to keep them
Mhm.
to myself, because they were not well received. They were always
Right.
questioned, and so I learned to keep my mouth shut. As I grew older and I went through my life and had other mystical experiences and near death experiences, I continued to store them in my heart and not share them.
Mhm.
When I came to the conclusion over the years that maybe there's some people who are naturally born mystics and they have these experiences, whether it's karmic or not, I don't,
Mhm.
but we do have them, and we don't share them because society tells us not to. And there's more of us than we know because none of us share it. And so one of the reasons why I'm here tonight, as I often do, is I share these experiences because I want other people to have the courage to talk about them.
I think it's wonderful, and I have
That's
a
about it.
complete theory, if you want to hear it, based on your experience with this
Yeah.
illuminated being. I believe that this was an extraterrestrial. I believe you've been having these
Uh,
experiences from very early on. I believe that um, it doesn't feel to me like this is not just a like a ghost. I don't believe it's that. I truly believe that, like you say, people come here. Believe everybody's gifted in a way, but we do have light beings that come in, and a lot of us do light work. We take that work. We work with the light. We work with the planet. We work with people. We work with animals. We shift and work with power spots. We realign things. It's just something that light workers do, and in doing that, chances are it comes from not just a higher power with respect to our creator and the source, but I truly believe that there are a lot of beings out there who do the exact same thing and are here to guide us along. My
this
thought.
I think that, and I don't know this. I just think this that may have been Ganesh. Um,
Yes, it sounds exactly
maybe
like who it was.
that's kind of how it
Yes.
struck me. Somebody's got a question over here.
But there's a
W-
belief that they're definitely extraterrestrial. I will read it. We are most of our audience is audio because we're an FM station, so we like to
mm,
definitely bring them up. So Wayne has a question. I've heard theories that the light is an engineered construct to trick us into believing that is the way home, when in reality it takes us back into the plane of existence. I've heard this theory and curious as to yours, as to why, they entice us into believing in reincarnation. They entice us into going to the light, but yet to fear the dark. We really shouldn't fear the dark. Some believe that the people who go to darkness are actually time travelers, that sort of thing, who've escaped the cycle. What are your thoughts?
I wasn't tricked. When I died,
Ah,
I knew who I was. I knew where I was. I remembered who I was. I remembered where I was. I remembered who I was with. It was
hmm
there was no trickery at all. I chose to come back both times. I was welcome to
hmm
stay. I saw other incarnations of my life, other incarnations of my soul,
Hmm.
all of them in timelessness, none of them me.
Hmm.
They were all experiences that my soul had, but they weren't the totality of myself. So I don't, I'm not afraid of dying. I've spent my whole career helping people die and
Hmm.
helping them find the light inside themselves so that they can find their way home. I, so
Did
that's
the
I understand that there is a theory, but I don't buy
hmm
it.
Okay, excellent. Tamara's got two comments here. She has a problem with being born sensitive. We don't come with instructions.
No,
Absolutely.
nope.
And most sensitive children learn not to talk.
Right. Well, because
So,
you say stuff and people look at you sideways.
mhm. Yeah, I try to work with parents who have children who talk about seeing things, much like your experience, only they're seeing, like for myself, for example, being a medium, I've seen dead people from very early on. And I'm very fortunate that I come from a family who are very open-minded, and my mother would basically ask questions without guiding me. She'd show photographs, and a lot of times it was just deceased family members who I would not have known. She said, "You recognize somebody?" And I'd say, "Well, this person here, oh, this was your grandfather's brother," and blah, blah, blah. So I was not frightened of it. But I think it's like you say, I think we as parents have to guide children to not fear these things, or maybe you should fear them. But when a child comes to you and says, well, I've seen something, or they're interacting with a spirit, and the parent will say something along the lines of, don't be silly, don't be stupid, there's no
Right.
such thing as imaginary friends, right? So the child now, after a while, because I've seen negative entities mimic children, and they go on to the household gets into a lot of trouble because a child is looked at as the weak link, easy to manipulate, easy to scare. And it's not always the case, but it is the case many times, because that's the type of work I do, is work with malevolent entities and clear them
Mm,
out of people's homes, out of their lives. Sometimes people have lifetime attachments. That's where
mm,
I've chosen to work, you know, in that field. And a lot of times it's the child who's been manipulated, and they can't go to the parent because they've been literally made to feel like they're very silly. Therefore, they have no one to turn to. So,
yeah. Well, that's what happens, and then it gets passed on generation after generation. Don't talk about it.
mhm, exactly. And my mother said the same thing for a while. It's a family secret. Don't talk about things like that. Why
Hmm.
not? you know so I like this when Tamara says, I made, for my child, I made the paranormal as normal as possible, and to look at it logically. So why is the paranormal, maybe it is the real normal if we're dealing with dimensions and multiverses and things of that nature. Maybe it's this, we're the ones that are out of whack, so to speak. you know so I
Yeah.
don't know, but it just sounds to me, because a lot of the gods, you know Ganesh, for example, a lot of the gods, um, were believed, ancient gods were believed to be extraterrestrials.
Hmm.
And the fact that you have a connection with one, if this is the being that came to you so lovingly and gave you such an unbelievable experience, it tells me that you're very special for them to come and just say, we're going to show you something. We all come here, and we often don't remember why. We don't remember our
Mm,
past lives. We have to go through processes, dying, to remember them, or visions, or dreams, or downloads, or whatever the case may be. But on an average, we don't really remember them. You have these unbelievable children who are born saying, oh, I died over here, and this was my wife, and blah, blah, blah. They remember their past lives, but on an average, we don't. But we come here for a purpose, and we come here to pave the way for something. We come here in this time, this space, this place. I think we all come here with a job to do, and some of us have a bigger job than others, and I think that's pretty much you.
Well, I
Good job.
definitely came back
Good
with
job.
thanks. I definitely had and another vision I had as a kid. I out of body in the divine presence. I knew that I had a task in life, and that
Yes.
I had an agreement before I came here to work
Mhm.
for the divine, and that's how I've spent my life,
Mhm.
trying to help. And I want to answer Wayne. Wayne was saying, "I'm not afraid of dying, but of coming back against my will."
This is
I
a concern. Yeah.
I was a concern. Well, so the last thing I wanted to do after I died the first time was come back here. After I chose to come back here, I asked to come back after I died the first time. I
Mhm.
immediately regretted it upon coming back.
Uh-oh.
What a stupid thing I did. And
Right.
all I wanted to do was go home. I spent my entire life trying to carve my way back on my interior life through my meditative Kriya Yoga, Ashtanga Yoga kind of things, and centering prayer practices to try
Mhm.
to create a reconnection, to make that connection stronger. But
Right.
I never wanted to come back. Never, ever. Why would I want to come back to this hellscape? As
Mhm.
beautiful as it is, it's
Right.
still a hellscape of suffering. And then
Right.
I died again, and I died again in 2015 of a heart attack this time, and chose to come back again for a very similar reason. People in my family needed me to be here, and I was, for
Mhm.
some reason,
The
allowed to
same.
make this choice. Even though I was being welcomed home again back into the divine presence, I
Mhm.
chose to come back. And after the second death experience, I started thinking about it. It if I could if I could be like a bodhisattva kind of person, if I could come back again if I knew who I was, if I could
Mhm.
remember from the beginning my divine self, maybe I'll come back again if I have the choice. I don't know
Mhm.
if I will have that choice. I don't know whether I'll get sent back to some kind of life here or somewhere else. I'm not really sure. But
Mhm.
one thing I did learn when I died the first time is that the divine infinity provides us with an opportunity for reunion with itself
Right.
into the infinite, and I tasted that, and that's all I want. So
Mhm.
I aim my physical life toward this, so that I aim my soul life, my consciousness life toward this,
Mhm.
that will continue on after my death, whether I get
Right.
incarnated again or I don't get incarnated again.
Mhm.
Whether those incarnations, my past lives, they don't really matter to me in terms of my soul, because
Mhm.
if I aim myself at the origin of myself, at my original goodness, at my highest consciousness,
Right.
that's
Right.
my actual self, and that's really what I'm after. I'm after
Mhm.
being back in that place.
Right.
Um,
Right.
s-
That's tough because it's like getting a glimpse of heaven and coming back, and it's like, oh, you just have to finish the task, I think is what it comes down to. Tamara says, oh, here we go. God, it's a glitchy tonight. We're usually given information on past lives if we need the information in this life. Yeah, I believe
that makes
that's very
sense.
possible. Yeah, it's very, very possible. I mean, some people just naturally have it. For me, a lot of my past lives started coming back in the form of dreams,
Hmm.
and I was just back there, and I started just I've had like deceased family members or people from other my past lives come forward and just start giving me glimpses of things and information. My grandfather, who's been deceased for almost 30 years, was instrumental in putting me on a path to discover not just past lives, but family lineage.
Hmm.
That was completely mind blowing. And it answered pretty much everything. So it's like,
Wow.
yeah, well, being in this field also, I tend to work with a lot of interesting people from around the world, much like this. Like the radio show, you end up meeting so many people. Well, I mean, I spent, a couple of decades filming and being in television and people reaching out to me and you make your connections, much like what we're doing now.
Hmm.
And you just meet certain people that will look at you and just say, "Oh, blah blah blah." Like I've worked with a lot of gifted people. I'm like, "What? For real?" You go and you research it and you're like, "Well, crap, this is a thing." So, I like to say that as much as the listeners learn from people, so do we as hosts
Oh yeah.
listen and learn.
It's all
So
about
I
learning.
learn something new every single day.
Mhm.
Don't let that go to waste. It's a privilege to learn something, no matter how little it is. If it's something you didn't know before, it's a privilege to know it. That's how I look at it. I'm so grateful to learn new things and to meet new people. So, what's next for Peter?
Well, I am flying out to LA to meet my movie producers in about a week and a half. So I sold
Good.
my second book has been optioned for a film. I've been working with these people for 2 years. Thank you,
Congratulations.
and flying out to have dinner with them.
Ooh,
And
dinner
and
sounds serious.
well, it's the next step along the way. I still have a
Yes.
couple of chapters to write for them, and I should be done with my part of it coming up in the next few months. But
Hmm.
then it'll move off to the next level. It takes quite a number of years to get a project this large underway, and we've been at it for 2
Hmm.
years, and this is the first time I'm gonna meet them face to face, and one of them is a near-death experiencer. So
Oh, so
that's how this
this will
whole
be a film or documentary on your near-death experience?
Yeah, they're talking about a feature film, and or it depends. They're some of it's up to the script writer. I'm not the script writer, but my book is essentially act two. If you ever studied Shakespeare, there's three acts in every Shakespeare
That's right.
play. My book is
Right.
act two, and they needed an act one introduction, and they needed an act three. And so I've been working with them on other parts of my life, stories from other parts of my life to construct this movie with them. So
Right.
that's what I've been doing, and once I'm done that project off, it goes off to the scriptwriter, and they make decisions on what it's what kind of series or feature film, and
Hmm.
off it then it
I
maybe
think
you'll
it's
see it on the big screen.
fantastic. Well, I mean, you've shared your experiences, with us. This is like what, third, fourth time. This has been,
It's
fantastic.
like
I think it
we know each other
we
now.
do. It's like, well, yeah, I know. It's just like we're just sitting there, having a drink and having a convo. I love it, though. I love it, and I would love to see your story come to light. And I hope they do it justice, because the way you tell it, you make us feel like we're there with you as you're experiencing everything. So I really hope they do it justice and give it that same feeling, because it just makes it that much more special.
Well, I have confidence. So it's a divorced couple.
Ooh,
She's the near death experiencer, and that ended
mhm.
up that's what caused the divorce. Near death experience
Oh,
marriages. We do when you die in the middle of a marriage and you come back, a lot of those marriages don't make it, most of them.
really?
Um, and
Wow.
but they still work together, and he's made some major films and done really well with them. And so
Hmm.
I trust him, and I
Hmm.
trust her, and we'll see what happens. I hope so. It
Wow.
could fall apart, this business I've learned is very flighty, and so we could
Yes.
be right at the like, just about 2 weeks ago, I read in the paper or in the news about some big movie that was they dumped all this money into, and they're just about to go into production, and they canceled it. It was like Catwoman, I think it was Catwoman,
Why
and
would
they
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 do
they
that?
just canceled this movie. It's like all this money, and they're like, "No, we're not doing that." "Oh,
Oh my
okay."
God.
So I know that that can happen. But so far so good. We're still
Right.
moving along in the right direction, and they wanted to bring me out and meet me, and so that's what's going on. I get to go out and hang out
Yeah.
in their fancy places and eat some fancy food with them and
Just
talk
be a
business.
hobnobber.
I'll be hobnobbing.
I'm gonna be a hobnobber. How
I
about
thought
that?
I thought I'd show up as in my LL Bean outfit in LA, my
Yeah.
LL Bean boots and my flannel shirt and maybe a piece of a stalk of grass in my mouth or something. Um, my straw
Oh
hat. I
my
don't know.
God. You're funny. You're hilarious. My gosh. Okay, let's see. Before because we're nearing the slowly nearing the top of the hour, we're gonna hit one or two more comments. I once asked the universe to explain things to me, and the voice said, "You do not need to know." I replied, "But I want to know." And the reply was, "Your essence already does. Your physical can't
Right.
comprehend it."
This is truth. The brain. So one of the things about near death experience, whenever you hear a near death experience or tell a story about
Hmm.
their experience, it's all metaphor. It's all
Right.
simile and metaphor because the brain cannot comprehend who we are because we have no brains over there. There's no physical body.
No, it's all
So
through essence.
there's no comprehension. The soul really does know. So the
Mm-hmm.
process of A spiritual growth process involves not the accumulation of anything, but the negation of something, and it's the
Hmm.
negation of self. The more we practice the elimination of our own egoic mind and the story we tell ourselves, the more we remember who we are, who we
Hmm.
actually are. Even if the
Hmm.
brain can't comprehend it, the consciousness does, and that has an interface with the brain, and so the brain has some access to it. It's just can't
Right.
ever grasp it.
Right. And it makes complete sense. Complete sense. Tamara, death is always a harbor of change, good or bad. Yeah, yeah. I'm a
Well,
near-death
yeah.
experiencer. Like, Wayne is a near-death experiencer. Funny, he's coming up with those things. You know,
Well, hey, if you guys are going to mention the International Association for Near-Death Studies,
do it. Promote
IN,
yourself.
well, this is IANDS, IANDS.org. I'm part of this organization. It's a scientific-based organization that researches NDEs for the last
Okay.
40 years, and there's a
Oh,
very large community of near-death experiencers around this group. And I just came back from our conference. I was the MC for this conference, a science conference in Salt Lake City, a couple of weeks ago. And what makes it so attractive for me to go is that there's lots of near-death experiencers who go to this thing. Next year is going to be in Virginia, and there's a
hmm.
radiance. There's a collective radiance that occurs in this conference because of the bubble of light that all of these NDEers carry with us.
So can you say
Shared.
that again? I'm going to put it right in
Sure.
chat.
It's the
I N. Okay,
IANDS.org.
got it. I
A
A
N
N
D
D S
S.org.
.org. Oh, okay. I'm just going
And
to put it up here because it'll hit all of the IANDS. My gosh, I forgot the S. It'll go through all 8 chat rooms simultaneously. So here it goes. There we go.
great.
That
So
link's all in there.
IANDS is an association of scientists, university-based skeptics who've
Mhm.
researched near-death experience, and a whole lot of us who are near-death experiencers. And
So how is that when you have a skeptic saying to you,
well,
like,
I
what's the most
want this.
common thing they say? No, it didn't
Well,
happen.
these people are researchers, so they're not they're scientists, and they approach it
Right.
with scientific method, and they've been researching this for 40 years. People like Raymond Moody and Pim von Lommel and Bruce Grayson, names you may or may not know. Bruce has a new book called After, which is fabulous.
Hmm.
But I want science. I like science. I want science to examine this, because how else are we going to convince the people who don't have an experience? They're going to need evidence. I don't need
Hmm.
evidence. Anybody who's had an
Right.
experience, that the experience is the evidence. But for people who
Right.
don't have an experience, if we want this to be um, more socially acceptable, we need some science backing it, and
Right.
so at least among certain populations. And the science is showing that the science doesn't know where consciousness comes from, and
It's
that there are
true. But
these
at least they admit
phenomena.
it's there, though, don't
But
they?
they
Like
do. They admit it's there,
yes,
and
that's a
that
big step.
there's so in a court of law, if there's an accumulation of, you can convict on an accumulation of circumstantial evidence. And
Right.
NDE is sort of like that. There are tens of millions of us who come back and tell similar stories about love and light on the other side, and that's those two words, light and love, show up like 70% of the time in all of our
Right.
conversations. um, that's a lot of evidence that this is real, and that
Right.
piques the interest of these people, and so they want to look at this and find some evidence. And there was this guy named Sam Parnia. He was or is, I think he's he's a cardiac anesthesiologist surgeon, and he was at Stony Brook in New York, and in Birmingham University in England, and people were coming back from the dead in his surgery. They would say
Hmm.
stuff to him like, "I died, and I saw God," and he's like, "You did not." And so he decided to start to wire them up during surgery and see if they died, and find out what the stories after. In his
Hmm.
second, he did these 2 studies called the Aware studies, Aware
Hmm.
Study 1 and Aware Study 2. And in Aware Study 2, his conclusion was this: that consciousness continues to exist after death for a period of time. He doesn't know how long, because he's a scientist. That's what he's willing to say. He's willing to say that consciousness continues to exist after death for a period of
Mm-hmm.
time because he could measure it. That's a big step for people. That's like
Mm-hmm.
getting on the news sort of big step. Oh, what? Conscious? You can measure this thing? That's
Right.
noetic. That's right.
Noetic.
The
Noetic.
noetic,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? Noetic scientist, right?
Yeah.
Um, so I'm all for science looking at it. I don't need science to convince me because
Right. Because here we
it's
are.
real.
Right. Right. It's kind of hard to say that to somebody who's been through it, But I mean, I agree. You have to go through the motions, and if science backs it, well, then it's one more step, I guess,
One
to
more step.
you know, at
Maybe
least they
somebody,
admit that the essence goes on after death. They don't know
right?
where the heck it
It's a
goes.
big, it's a big
It's a
deal.
big deal. It is. It is.
It
Because how
is.
long did it take to get to that point? We're what, 2022? It's taken a long time to get to that
Yeah,
point.
except for that it's longer than that. It's 300,000 years for Homo sapiens. We've been around for a
It's
long
true.
time.
It's
Um,
true. It's true. Agreed. Agreed. Well, we are there at the top of the hour, and I really want to thank you for coming on. It's always such a pleasure to have you on. It's just almost as like I always say like you're one of the listeners' fan favorites. So it's always nice. So yes, right. We'll have to do it again, as always.
not bad.
Let us know when you get that film out there, and we'll
For
pump it.
sure. For sure. Thank you. Thank you. And I'm available for conversation and counseling and wisdom conversation at peterpanagore.love. I have a specialty in mystical experience, obviously.
Yes, just a little bit. Yes, sure. Right, lots. No, this is great. As you can see, we've got the website down at the bottom here, and that stays there forever. So,
Man.
yes, and you are very welcome, Carrie. Thank you guys for tuning in. You guys are wonderful. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. So, thank you, and I will be in touch.
Good.
All
I
right.
will see you soon. Peace and love, everybody.
And to you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, guys, here we go. Always, always, always a pleasure when we have Peter on. As always, he's just so much fun. And look at that, I went and lost my words. Look, Jesus, get me all frazzled and confused here. It's hard because I'm solo. Anyway, I didn't even get to do our station ID tonight. I was just so enthralled in everything that was going on. But we want to thank everybody for joining in tonight. You guys make it so much more exciting when you get into chat. All your questions and comments are very, very important. We do appreciate it. So thank you for participating. Big thank you to Peter Panagore. Honestly, I just adore him, and it's always a pleasure having him join us. Huge thank you to Folgers Coffee for sponsoring the show. Big thank you to Dr. Justin Snicker, for providing his music and his voice for the intro and the outro. And of course, big thank you, United Public Radio, UFO Paranormal Radio, our networks. Thank you, 105.3 FM. Thank you. Thank you. If you guys want to contact us, please don't do it on social media. Please contact us at the Outer Realm Contact at gmail.com. The Outer Realm Contact at gmail.com. If you enjoy what you're seeing or hearing, no matter what platform you're on, please just give us some love, subscribe, like us up, join the group, whatever it takes. We work really hard to bring you guys good guests and great content. I'm going to be a harpy. Folgers commercials, people, do it. You want to promote yourself, do it in a cheap way. Tell us about yourself. Just make sure that Folgers is somehow in the mix, because that stuff that goes out and that stays on the archives forever and ever. We periodically will pop them up, but our archives tend to hit hundreds of thousands of people, sometimes millions. And that just stays there forever and ever. So I think it works for everybody involved. So next week, guys, we're in October. So that's spooky month. So we're going to start having a lot of fun. Wednesday night, we bring back Charles Christian, all the way from the UK. Now, Charles had his own radio show right here on the network for a really long time. And it involves all kinds of information, cryptids, ghosts, UFOs, you name it. So he's going to help us kick off October, spooky month, with some really amazing tales from over the pond. And he's going to try to make it spooky as he can. But at the end of it all, it's just always so interesting, because when it happens in the UK, you know it's good stuff. So anyway, check out his archives on the show. He's been on with us twice, to give you a feel, for what he's all about before we get into another segment. Thursday night, for the very first time, we're going to be welcoming fellow UPRN hosts, Phil and Julia Syracusa, host of the Horsefly Chronicles, and they air every Monday night at 8 p.m. They're on for an hour. They're a lot of fun, really great people. And they basically had a really, really haunted house. They went through really horrific times and unbelievable things. And they're going to come and share that with all of us. So definitely tune in. You're not going to want to miss it. And tomorrow night, Church of Mavis, 8 p.m. And of course, the Centralist at 10. And that's always heated. Whole other type of conversation. But does really well and people love it. So check them out. So I'm going to leave you with that, and I'm going to say good night, and we're going to send Bubbles some more really good well wishes, because we want her to feel better. So everybody, good night. Have a fantastic, safe weekend.